Johnnie Walker sells over 22 million cases of blended Scotch every single year. Chivas Regal, Dewar's, and Buchanans move millions more. These brands spend hundreds of millions on advertising, celebrity endorsements, and packaging, designed to make you feel like you are buying something special. But the liquid inside many of these bottles costs a fraction of what you are paying. These are 8 blended Scotch brands that are robbing you blind, and 5 that are actually worth your money. And now for a possibly unpopular opinion. Number 8. Johnnie Walker Black Label. Yes, Black Label. The bottle every whiskey channel recommends, the bottle every bartender defaults to, the blend that supposedly proves Johnnie Walker knows what they are doing. And look, it is not a bad whiskey. But here is the problem nobody wants to talk about. Black Label is bottled at 40%, the legal minimum for Scotch. It is chill filtered, which strips body and texture, and Diageo adds caramel colouring to give it that deep amber look, because the actual whiskey is paler than you think. Long-time Scotch drinkers say Black Label has gotten thinner over the years. Older bottlings from the 90s were 43%, and people who have compared them side by side say the difference is obvious. Diageo quietly diluted it to the legal floor while keeping the price steady at $30 to $35. At that price today, Compass Box Glasgow Blend gives you non-chill filtered, naturally coloured whiskey at 43%, loaded with Lafroig and Clinalish. Monkey Shoulder gives you a blended malt with no grain whiskey at all for the same money. Black Label is fine, but fine at $35 from the biggest Scotch company on earth when smaller producers are delivering more for less. That is coasting on your name. Number 7. Dewar's White Label. Dewar's White Label is the #1 selling Scotch whiskey in the United States. Let that context speak for itself, because popularity and quality are rarely the same thing. Dewar's blends over 40 different whiskies, with Aberfeldy's single malt at its core, but at 40% alcohol by volume, and with aggressive chill filtration. Whatever character those whiskies had gets stripped away before it reaches your glass. Reviewers consistently describe it as thin, sweet, and forgettable. One critic compared it to a Scotch that is embarrassed to be a Scotch. At $20 to $25, it is not expensive. But when famous Grouse costs less and delivers noticeably more balance and character, even a cheap bottle can be a bad deal. Number 6. Cuty Sark Original. Cuty Sark was once one of the most famous Scotch brands on the planet. Named after the legendary clipper ship, it dominated the American market for decades. Today, it survives on nostalgia and a price tag low enough that nobody bothers to complain. The original expression is bottled at 40% alcohol by volume. It is chill filtered, and it is so light in colour it looks almost like white wine. The flavour matches: pale cereal, faint citrus, and a finish that disappears before you can form an opinion. For $13 to $18 you might think it is harmless, but harmless is not the same as worth drinking. There are budget blends with actual flavour on the same shelf. Number 5. Buchanans Deluxe 12-year-old. Buchanans is a giant in Latin America. In Colombia, Mexico, and among Hispanic communities in the United States, this bottle is practically a cultural symbol. It moves around 2 million cases a year on brand loyalty alone. The 12-year-old is smooth, fruity, and completely generic. At 40% alcohol by volume and priced around $30 to $35, you are paying for a pleasant but unremarkable blend that has no interest in challenging your palate. The whiskey equivalent of elevator music. Diageo, the company that owns Buchanans, also owns distilleries like Dalwhinnie, Clinalish, and Talisker. The single malts that go into this blend are individually more interesting than the final product. You are literally paying for the sum of parts that somehow adds up to less. And at $35, you are already in single malt territory. A Glenfiddich 12 costs the same and gives you more flavour in one sip than Buchanan's delivers across a whole evening. Number 4. Johnnie Walker Red Label. Red Label is the single best-selling Scotch whiskey on earth. It has held that title since 1945, and it drives the bulk of Johnnie Walker's total volume. It is the default well Scotch at bars across 6 continents, and there is a reason bartenders reach for it when someone just orders a Scotch and soda without specifying a brand. It is cheap, it is everywhere, and it is harsh. Red Label is grain-forward, thin, and finishes with a bite that has nothing to do with complexity and everything to do with young whiskey that needed more time in the cask. The grain whiskey in red dominates the blend completely, and whatever malt character exists gets buried under a wave of ethanol and cereal. At $20 to $25, it is positioned as an entry point, but that entry point actively turns people off Scotch entirely. If your first experience with Scotch is Johnnie Walker Red, there is a very real chance you walk away thinking you do not like Scotch, and that is the real cost. Number 3. Chivas Regal 18-year-old. Chivas 18 is where blended Scotch starts getting genuinely overpriced. At $60 to $80, this is a blend that charges single malt prices. Yes, it carries an 18-year age statement, meaning the youngest whiskey in the blend spent at least 18 years maturing. The result is smooth, honeyed, and undeniably pleasant. But pleasant is not the same as worth $80. For that money, you could buy a Highland Park 12 and a Glenfiddich 12 and still have change left over. Both of those are single malts with more personality in one sip than Chivas 18 delivers across an entire bottle. Chivas makes solid blends. The 12-year-old is perfectly fine for what it costs, but the 18 is where they start charging you for the velvet box instead of the whiskey inside it. Number 2. Royal Salute 21-year-old. Royal Salute is Chivas Regal's luxury line, and it leans into the prestige angle harder than almost any other Scotch on the market. The 21-year-old comes in a ceramic flagon wrapped in velvet and is typically priced between $140 and $180. The whiskey inside is good, smooth and honeyed with dried fruit and gentle oak. Nobody is going to spit it out, but here is the problem. Royal Salute relies on the same Speyside distilleries as Chivas, primarily Strathisla and some undisclosed others. For $150, you could buy a Glenfarclas 21-year-old, which is a single malt aged in sherry casks from a family-owned distillery that has been running since 1836. Or a Glendronach 18-year-old, which is one of the richest sherried whiskies in Scotland. Both will outperform Royal Salute in complexity, character, and depth. You are paying for the ceramic bottle, the royal branding, and a drinking experience that is perfectly fine, but nowhere near what that money should buy. Number 1. Johnnie Walker Blue Label. Blue Label is the single greatest marketing achievement in the history of Scotch whisky. It costs between $170 and $250 depending on where you buy it. It carries no age statement. It is bottled at 40% alcohol by volume. It is chill filtered. The youngest whiskey in the blend could technically be as young as 3 years old. Diageo says only 1 in every 10,000 casks is selected for Blue Label, which sounds impressive until you remember they own 31 distilleries and over 10 million maturing casks. Blue Label is smooth, it is refined, and it is spectacularly boring for the price. Reviewers who love it call it balanced and subtle. Reviewers who do not call it thin, fleeting, and wildly overpriced. One of the most respected Scotch reviewers in the world, Serge Valentines of Whiskey Fun, gave it 87 points. For context, he regularly scores $40 single malts higher. You are paying for the blue glass bottle, the silk-lined box, and a brand name that has become synonymous with luxury through sheer marketing force. As a gift, Blue Label makes sense because the person receiving it knows exactly what it costs. As something to actually drink, your money goes dramatically further almost anywhere else. Now here are 5 blended Scotches that actually deserve a spot on your shelf. And if you are finding this helpful, consider subscribing. We cover Scotch, bourbon, and spirits every week. Number 5. Dewar's 12-year-old. Remember how we just put Dewar's white label on the overpriced list? Here is the twist. The 12-year-old is a completely different whiskey. Same company, same Aberfeldy malt at its core, but master blender Stephanie McLeod double ages it and finishes it in first fill bourbon casks. The result is layered with honey, vanilla, dried apricot, and soft oak. Whiskey Advocate gave it 94 points, the highest score ever awarded to a 12-year-old blended Scotch. It won Best Blended Scotch 12-year-old at the 2024 International Whiskey Competition and Gold at the World Whiskies Awards in 2025. All of that for $27 to $35. Dewar's White Label is the cautionary tale. Dewar's 12 is the redemption arc. Number 4. Famous Grouse Smoky Black. Famous Grouse has been Scotland's best-selling blend since 1980, and it holds a royal warrant for supplying the British royal household. The original is a solid everyday whiskey, but the Smoky Black version takes it somewhere far more interesting. It blends peated single malts, including Highland Park and Glenturret, with the classic Famous Grouse base, resulting in a whiskey that has genuine campfire smoke balanced with dried fruit and honey. At around $25 to $30, it punches well above its weight. If you have ever been curious about peated Scotch but did not want to commit to a full bottle of Laphroaig, Smoky Black is the perfect bridge. Number 3. Cuty Sark Prohibition. Earlier we called out the original Cuty Sark for being lifeless and forgettable. Prohibition is what happens when someone at that company actually tries. Named after Captain William McCoy, the smuggler who brought Cuty Sark into America during the 1920s and gave us the phrase "the real McCoy," this small batch blend is bottled at 50% alcohol by volume and is non-chill filtered. That is 100 proof, from a brand you probably associate with the cheapest Scotch on the shelf. The black glass bottle looks nothing like the standard Cuty Sark, and the whiskey inside matches. Toffee, vanilla, salted caramel, and a hint of smoke that fades into a long, warm finish. At $25 to $30 for a 50% blend with no chill filtration, this is one of the best value propositions in all of Scotch whiskey. Number 2. Valentines 17-year-old. Valentines is the second best-selling Scotch brand on the planet, moving over 9 million cases in 2024. But while Johnny Walker gets all the attention, Valentine's 17-year-old quietly delivers one of the best aged blends in existence. Jim Murray named it World Whiskey of the Year in 2011. It won gold at the International Spirits Challenge in both 2024 and 2025. The blend draws from over 40 whiskies aged at least 17 years, with Glenbergie, Glentorkas and Miltonduff single malts at its core. Honeyed sweetness, creamy vanilla, soft oak, and a subtle thread of smoke. At $80 to $100, compare that to Chivas 18 at similar money with far less character, or Royal Salute at nearly double the price with only marginally more complexity. Valentine's 17-year-old is the aged blend that actually earns its price tag. Number 1. Compass Box Glasgow Blend. John Glazer left his job as marketing director for Johnny Walker at Diageo to start Compass Box in the year 2000. He walked away from the marketing machine behind the biggest Scotch brand on earth to prove that blends deserve the same respect as single malts. The Glasgow blend is his thesis statement. It contains roughly 65% malt whiskey and 35% grain, making it one of the most malt-heavy blended Scotches you can buy. It uses Laphroaig for peat, Clynelish for wax and citrus, and sherry cask matured Benrins for sweetness. Bottled at 43% with no chill filtration and no caramel colouring. The label features Glasgow's famous Wellington statue wearing its iconic traffic cone, a nod to the city's sense of humour. On the palate, you get smoky peat, dark chocolate, espresso, and toffee, all woven together in a way that makes you forget you are drinking a blend. For $35 to $45, Compass Box Glasgow Blend embarrasses bottles that cost 3 and 4 times as much. It is proof that the best Scotch whiskey is almost never the one with the biggest marketing budget. So there you have it. 8 blended Scotch brands surviving on reputation and marketing spend, and 5 that prove you do not need a famous name to get exceptional whiskey. Next time you are standing in the Scotch aisle, skip the celebrity endorsement and reach for the bottle next to it. That is usually where the real whiskey lives. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing, and we will see you in the next one.